On today's show, marine archaeology, more life under the sea, and ooze with some magnetic power. Is that an attraction?
Hello, welcome to Hot Science.
Hi, and thanks for joining us. We're about to take some photos.
So we don't have a camera.
But we've got the film here in this black packet, and we've got all of these objects here to film.
So how are we going to do it?
Well, we're going to take the photo paper out and leave it on the desktop here and put these things on top and make prints of them. But we have to make sure that there's no light in the studio when we do it, otherwise all the film will turn black.
Oh, so it's the light that kind of helps to take the photo?
It does. It reacts with chemicals in the film.
Well, let's have a go.
OK, well, let's bring down the lights in the studio. We'll have to work in the dark here. Is that all right with you?
Oh, OK. I don't know how good I'd be at that.
Here's a piece of film.
Oh, wow.
For you.
Right.
And we'll take 3 out, shall we?
Yep.
2, 3.
Now, you can't see what we're doing very well, but I'm just going to place some objects on my piece of film like that.
Oh, OK. Now, I'm going to take a photo of this pair of sunglasses.
Right.
And a pair of scissors like that.
What about this spider?
No! You sure?
Yeah, we've got a big plastic spider.
Okay.
We'll just put that one down like that.
I'm feeling scared already. And a compass and a pencil. And how about some...
Magnet?
OK.
There we go, there we go.
Here are some little tacks. OK.
Now, what do we have to do?
Well, now I'll turn the light on.
Ah.
And, you can see what we've done. And the light will now start reacting with chemicals in the paper, and where the paper's not covered, it will turn black, and underneath where these objects are, it will stay white.
Ah.
Hey, while we're talking about light, why don't we step over this way and have a look at some other experiments we've got to do with light. Let's bring the lights back up in the studio for a moment. And over here, we've got a different sort of light to have a look at.
And what's this one called?
This is ultraviolet light, and we've got some special lamps here. Now, ultraviolet light is one of the types of light that is in sunlight.
And isn't that dangerous to our skin?
Sure, it's ultraviolet light which can cause damage to your skin, but these are safety lights, so they won't do that. Also, ultraviolet light can also cause you to go blind, but not these lamps. So let's have a look at how different things look under ultraviolet light, like this highlighter pen and this piece of rock.
Should we bring the lights down?
Bring the lights down. And you bob down really close there, Robin.
Right.
And I'd like to see a big, cheesy smile.
Ah!
And look what happens with your teeth.
I don't.
They're glowing, aren't they, really well?
What about my fingernails?
They're glowing too. And have a look at my shirt. Looks really white, doesn't it?
Why is this happening?
Well, there are chemicals in the washing powder which do something called fluorescing. They fluoresce under ultraviolet light, which means they shine really brightly. And we put them in washing up powder so that when we wear our clothes after they've been washed in them, they look whiter than white.
And so take a look at my jacket. This is great.
Ah, now this would look good on a sunny day, wouldn't it? With the ultraviolet light shining from the sunlight.
And I've also got a
Hot Science hat.
cap.
It goes really nicely with your smile. Look, I've got a highlighter pen here. We use these for highlighting on a page. And one of the reasons we do it is that it does shine really brightly under light. You watch this. I'll write Sue. And look how well...
Isn't that neat?
It shines up under the ultraviolet light.
Now,
great.
Sue, I've got a bit of a surprise for you. Give me your nose.
Oh, no.
Now, you probably use this stuff when you're at the beach. It's zinc cream, and as you can see, it does wonderful
I hope you're
things.
doing pretty patterns.
Oh, absolutely.
Not
Now,
clown faces or anything like that.
there you go.
Oh, no.
Doesn't
What do I
she
look
look
like?
beautiful?
I can see out of the corner of my eyes that certain things are glowing. But I have another piece of rock here. Now, this is a natural rock called calcite. And how does it look under the ultraviolet light? It looks like a piece of cauliflower, and it's shining really brightly, isn't it?
It is.
Well, let's bring up the lights in the studio here again and see what colour this piece of rock really is. See, it's not bright white at all. It's a sort of a mustardy brown, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And Susie, your face doesn't look half as bad now.
Does it? It feels funny. I feel like going out and having a swim. Let's go and have a look how our photos are going over here on this side of the street.
Right. Well, the light's still on.
Yep. OK, we'll turn this light off for the time being and we'll lift up some of the different things and see if the film has been exposed.
Can I try this big spider?
The spider. Ah!
Oh, wow.
You can see...
You can just see the outline.
That's great.
Yeah, if I put my shadow over it, you can see a little bit better.
I'll get out of the way.
Now, how about the little pins?
Pins and the magnet. That's really
magnet.
nice. And underneath the glasses, you can see where the frame was. And the scissors.
And also the compass.
And what about this one that you set up?
Yeah.
This picture.
Ah,
Hey!
isn't that
I think
excellent?
that's the best one. And you see where the paper was left uncovered, it went dark, and where it was covered over, it stayed really white.
Now, what will happen to these now?
Well, as we leave them here under the sunlight, the whole page will start to turn black and we'll lose our prints.
Oh, really?
Yep, they're not going to last very long at all.
Convection.
You've read the book?
now see the movie, The Big Black Blob, starring me.
Hello, Ooze.
Oh, I see.
You're making lots of noise. What are you doing?
I was just playing around with this lamp here.
Ah, a special oil lamp,
Yeah.
which shows us convection currents.
Yeah, it's great.
Have you been watching it go up and down, the black go
Sure
up and down?
have.
Well, there's oil inside here and it's being heated up. It's being heated down. Oh, sorry, get my finger out of
okay.
your face. Heated up down the bottom here.
Yeah.
And as it heats, it moves up and then it cools down and it sinks down again.
Yeah.
It's really quite a fun way of looking at convection currents because convection currents is to do with the way different fluids like gases and liquids can circulate and move depending on their temperature and density. Because you've heard hot air rises, haven't you?
Yeah, sure does.
It does, and so do hot liquids
Right.
because they're less dense and they're able to rise up, whereas cold air
Yeah.
and cold liquids will actually sink because they're more dense. They're sort of a little bit, more dense, heavier if you like.
Yeah.
So sometimes you've probably noticed that it can be really warm on the top of your water.
Yeah, sometimes it's really, really chilly down here.
Underneath, that's right. The
Yeah.
cold air will settle to the bottom and the warm air will be on top. And we use convection currents, the movement of the fluids as they change from hot and cold, in lots of different ways. Radiators and storage heaters use convection currents to circulate warm air around rooms and houses.
Right.
And in nature we find convection currents, and convection currents are what make birds able to soar really high up in the sky without having to flap their wings. You see, they hop into these hot air thermals and the hot air rises, it goes up, up, up. And the birds just sit in those hot air, or flap their wings a little bit, and soar around in those hot air thermals and go really high. But if the air cools down, it won't keep going up, it'll start to come down.
Oh, the birds fall.
they
poor
could.
birds.
But we can have a look at our own convection current here.
Oh, great.
I have some hot oil, which I'm just going to heat over some candles.
Yeah.
Now, what's going to happen here, Ooze, is that the oil down the bottom here near the candle flames will get hot, and because it will become less dense, it will start to rise, okay, up to the top here, where it's able to cool down more easily, a long way from the candles as well.
Yeah.
When it cools down, it becomes more dense again, and where do you think it'd go?
To the bottom?
Yes, that's right. So it comes up as when it's heated, cools down and it goes down again, and so you get these convection currents.
Wow.
And we can see them if we put some food dye in.
Oh,
We'll just
great.
suck up some. I picked green Ooze. I thought you'd like that.
Oh, I love green.
Green food dye.
Yeah.
And if I just drop some food dye into our beaker here,
Right.
you watch what happens in the oil. Now the idea here is, Ooze, that as the oil warms up, we'll see the little drops of food dye carried up in those convection currents.
Oh,
can you
look!
see? Yep. They're rising. Hey, that's really good. And do you know, Ooze, one of the best things about an experiment like this is being able to sit back and just watch them.
Great.
Next, your imagination put to the test.
What should I do with this plastic cup now that I've finished drinking? Well, I could throw it away, but that wouldn't be very environmentally friendly. Can you think of what else I could do with it? We have 5 very imaginative girls working on that problem right now. First of all, Rachel and Crystal. What have you done with your foam cup?
Made a parachute out of it.
And how did you do that?
We got a plastic cup
Or foam cup, yep.
and stuck some straws on it with stick tape.
And then what'd you do?
And then we attached string to the straws and the plastic bag.
So you've recycled some plastic here?
Yes. And then it flies down.
It flies down. Shall we test it out?
Yeah, okay.
Can we put anything in it?
Yeah, if you put marbles in it, it'll make it go down faster.
Oh, we'll try both ways. Okay, Rachel, let's test it out. We'll try it first off without anything in it. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Well done, it flew. Now let's try it again with some marbles in it. I've got 2 marbles here. Just put them in there and 1, 2, 3. And it went even faster. Thank you for that. It's really clever. Now over to Claire. She's got another really good idea. What have you made, Claire?
A magnifying glass.
A magnifying glass. And how did you do that?
I got a frame cut and put paper mache on it.
And why'd you put paper mache on it?
Just to make it look good.
And to stop the light getting in, maybe?
Yeah.
And what else did you do?
I poked a hole in the top and got 2 lenses.
Right, so, all right, there's the hole. And what do the lenses do?
This thicker one makes them smaller and the thinner one makes them bigger.
Right, and you can have a look through it?
Yeah.
Well, our cameras aren't as good as our eyes are, so we can't actually see what Claire sees when she uses her microscope. But what do you look at underneath?
Bugs.
Hang on a tick, let's just have a look at those little bugs. Now, Claire's invention is pretty good because it's also environmentally friendly. Why is that, Claire?
Because you can look at a bug or something and not hurt it.
And not hurt it. That's a very good idea. Now, over to Vienna. Vienna, what did you make?
Scale.
A scale, and how did you do that?
I got a pop stick and I made holes through it and I just put this string through it.
Right, so you measured it out and put some string in the middle?
Yep. And I put some string in the 2 plastic cups.
Right.
And I threaded through the 2 holes and made a scale.
And they balance? Can we put anything in them? Oh, wonderful. What about the other side? Well done. Got some working scales. Now finally over to Kate. You've made 2 great things. Tell me about this one.
Well, this is called a golf, mini golf, and I got the plastic cup and I made an obstacle course in it, and you put the ball down the hole and it comes out the other end.
And you've even made a little green. That's
Yep.
wonderful. Should we try that again? Do I just put it through here?
Yep.
Just send it off and down it goes. Now, what about this one up here? This looks pretty interesting.
That's a balloon rocket, and I cut a hole in the bottom of the cup.
Right, just here, yep.
And I stuck 2 wings on the side, and I attached a straw, and then I stuck the balloon on the end.
And then the straw's going to travel along this string here. Let's give it a go. Blow it up really big. One more go. And it travelled all the way down to the end. Well, that's 5 really creative ideas of things you can do with a plastic cup. Now, what would you do with it? Have a think about it.
A giant cockroach was collected from Ains Waters in Queensland. It measured 7.9 centimetres long and weighed 21.9 grams.
Whoa, what a huge cockroach!
It must have been about this big.
Yeah.
I'm glad I haven't seen one that big.
Oh, I wish I had have.
There are some amazing things that nature produces, aren't there? Giant cockroaches and things like this, which is a piece of coral.
Oh, yes.
And did you know that this piece of coral is actually the skeleton of thousands of different little tiny animals that make up the coral? And each one of these little animals lives in the tiny holes in this piece of coral. Can you see a little hole there?
Yeah.
Well, lots of them.
Lots
well,
of
little
them, yeah.
animals live in there and they're called coral polyps. And as the coral polyp grows, it sends out a long filament, and from that filament a new bud can develop, and it produces its own little skeleton around it, and over thousands of years you can get these huge corals forming.
Yeah.
And some corals are beautiful colours, but there are only 2 corals that produce their own colour. The colours we see in most corals are actually produced by algae, which live in that coral tissue.
Yeah, like me.
You're an algae, that's
Yeah, I
right.
used to live in coral.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, we also, as well as the colours, you get beautiful shapes in coral. Have a look at some of these. Hey, look, there are some polyps poking out. Hey, and Ooze, did you know something I only just discovered recently myself?
What's that?
That the shape of corals actually depends on the species of corals.
Yeah.
Well, I thought all coral was the same and it could be any
No.
old shape. But it can't. If you can look at the shape of a coral, you can actually tell what sort of coral it is.
Yep.
And I've got 3 different sorts of coral here. Let's have a look at some of these. This one here is called a staghorn coral, just because of its shape. And so is this one here. But in fact, they're different species. Can you see how they're different shapes?
Yeah.
Okay, and this one over here is called a brain coral. Probably because it looks a bit like somebody's brain.
It does, doesn't it?
It sure does. As well as coral, the sea is full of amazing creatures.
Oh,
There's
it sure
coral and there's
is.
little chaps like you.
Yeah.
And there are also amazing creatures called seahorses. Let's go and find out more about that now.
The seahorse is one of the more unusual creatures in the ocean, but this delicate fish is more than just a thing of beauty.
Well, seahorses have some pretty interesting things about them. Can you tell me what they are?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to know that it is the male that gives birth to the babies. The female lays her eggs on a pouch in the male, and he fertilises them, and they grow there, and he feeds them, essentially, and then he does actually give birth to them as live juveniles.
Does the male seahorse then take care of them?
No, not once they've hatched, no. But while they're incubating inside him, he does. He removes the waste, he fans them with water, keeps them oxygenated all the way. But after he gives birth, no, they fend for themselves.
So how long are they incubated?
Generally about a month, depending on the size, but as a general rule, about a month. And then they hatch. Well, they're not hatched, they're born live, and they're a perfect copy of the adult. Just be about 3 or 4 millimetres long.
Where do seahorses live?
Mainly around rocky foreshores, and weed, and in the wash areas and intertidal zones. But in weed they can hang on to, but usually move in water.
And how do they hang on?
With their tail, as you can see with this guy here, they've got a pretty tight grip. They don't actually swim around much. They do have fins, but that's mainly just to orientate themselves and keep them upright, but mainly just wrapping their tail around in a coil.
Are seahorses fish?
Yes, they are, because they do have a skeleton. They're not an invertebrate like crayfish or prawns, but they do have a hard exoskeleton on the outside, which is made mainly from similar things to scales on normal fish, but they formed a hard exoskeleton in seahorses, as well as an internal skeleton.
And what do they eat?
They eat brine shrimps, small crustaceans, those sort of things.
What are their predators?
Other fish, big fish, yeah. Anything that would eat a prawn or a worm or anything like that would certainly eat a seahorse.
Next, discovering historic wrecks.
This boat is heading out on an archaeological expedition. Now, normally we think of archaeologists as people who dig up the ground, but this is marine archaeology, the study of interesting relics found in and under the water. And that includes old ships which have been deliberately wrecked to act as breakwaters and provide a home for marine life. This is one of them, the remains of a J-class submarine. It was an early warship that was given to Australia by the British. When it was no longer considered useful, it was scuttled. And this is the wreck of the Cerberus, an ironclad ship built back in 1867. This is where our marine archaeologists will be working today. Unlike their land-based colleagues, they won't be using a pick and shovel. Instead, they need scuba diving gear to allow them to stay below the surface for a long time. Although the wrecks are already well documented, they change over the years, and there's always plenty to see, particularly on a vessel that's been underwater for most of this century. The Cerberus was one of the first ships in the Victorian Navy, and it's been used as a breakwater since the early 1900s.
See you later.
These archaeologists are particularly interested in learning more about the effects of salt water on steel. So they'll be having a good look all the way along the sunken vessel.
This area here is the stern, which you can see the overhang. If you look up a little bit high, there's a dark shape in the water, and it comes down, and we're underneath the counter stern of this vessel now. Then as we swam out from underneath the stern, we swam along the starboard side of the wreck, and I filmed some of the plating. This is some of the bent frames that have been crushed under the weight of the turrets on top. These white tube worm shells in the white band along here is the original waterline where the ship was sitting before it sank below the surface a couple of months ago during some heavy storms. These bent pieces of metal that I'm rubbing with my hands are the ribs of the ship, and you can see the bright orange rust coming off as I rub it. That shows us that's quick corrosion. As we swim further towards the bow, you'll see more and more holes starting to appear in the plating. And as we get right up to the very bow of the ship, again you'll see this bright orange rust, but you'll also see a number of plates of the hull plating falling off, and you'll be able to actually see light through some of those holes. And we'll just move a little way into those holes to have a look. Again, we can see the holes as we swim back down the port side of the wreck, and on this side the plating is buckled outwards rather than being buckled underneath, and we swim along and you can see some of the plating buckled out. The edges of the plates in a lot of places are very thin, and it's so thin in fact that I can bend them with my fingers. Again, you can see the bright orange rust. Again, some more holes, and we'll swim into a little way into those holes for a look. You can see lots of small fish here as well. Don't know what they are. Now we're swimming back down the port side. We're almost back at the boat now, and you can see here that the bottom half of the hull is buckled away, and it's actually sitting about 2 metres away from the top part of the hull, so it's a big cup shape, and we'll swim along on the top of that plating for a little while. We arrived back at the stern of the vessel, and you can see the propeller come into view, and then we're back at the surface.
So there's more to those rusting old wrecks than meets the eye. They're important in archaeological and historical terms, and these scientists believe they're resources that need to be protected.
We'd like to preserve these wrecks so that we've got them there for future study, and future generations, our children's children, can then be able to look at them as well as us. So they're there for all time, well, for a long time anyway.
Quiz time! Who can give me an example of convection?
Oh, maybe hot air rising from a heater or a stove.
Oh, yes. Now, remember our paper cup challenge? Next time you've got a disposable cup, try and think of many different ways as possible of using it.
Great idea. And if you want a challenge right now, have a look at this little car I've made and see if you can work out how I make it go along like that. Whoa. And if you need a clue, have a look at Robin's ear and what I can do. Whoa! Time for us to go. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.